welcome to the Innovation Podcast. And I'm really excited about this one because we are doing it physically. I can see you.
Yes.
How are you doing today?
Doing great. Had a lovely start to the day. Played some paddle this morning, which is like a tennis squash hybrid, and I got really into it. So I'm now keenly paddling every week. And so I play like 3-4 times a week now. And that's like an hour and a half of really running around, getting up at 8:30 in the morning. So it's a great start to the day. So then I was getting excited for our podcast. So I think we've got an exciting topic coming up.
But I want to talk about Grab because I'm a big fan of Grab and I think you're a big user of Grab too. But really boggles my mind is how is it that they've taken so long to, not so long, but recently they've started reporting profits and that is after doing cost cutting. So can you give us a little bit history about Grab and then let's talk about the profits.
Yeah, Grab is, I think, an amazing story because it's sort of an Uber for Southeast Asia, but it's also different and it's also so much more. And actually Grab defeated Uber, so to say, in Southeast Asia, and Uber exited, but did take a stake in Grab. I believe it might be 30%. It could be more or less, but it's a substantial one. Minority stake, but a substantial one. So, it's really, got its own pedigree in carving out its area. But it came from Kuala Lumpur, actually. And I think it's a great example of a story born out of pain, which is that KL was consistently voted the worst place in the world for taxis.
Mm-hmm.
Taxis were terrible here and very inconsistent in the level of quality, not seen as safe, very inconsistent with the meters that were being charged, difficult to get a taxi at night, and especially with Malaysian weather, standing in a taxi rank in the blazing sunshine or the pouring rain is not fun for anybody, right? So to kind of address that, what Grab did originally, it was called My Taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And what it really started with was basically a sort of vetting process of taxi drivers.
Right.
Taxi drivers who wanted to kind of say, we're the good guys, and we'll use the digital app to build trust and to communicate we're a good taxi. So you're booking through taxis, which is different to the Uber model of having people with their own cars, but non-licensed taxi drivers.
Yeah.
So you're starting with the taxi community.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fundamentally different approach than the Uber, which is more conflictive, right? And so it was born out of that. And only then, a little bit into its journey, did it take on the now established model of having people bring their own cars and then offering that as a sort of a transportation solution. But what they then had is great ambitions to become the so-called super app. And so, first then they move into food delivery, right? And, I want to say this, maybe someone will fact check me and prove me wrong, but I want to say that it's true that I think Grab pioneered food delivery before Uber Eats. And I think one of the things that Uber did was see Grab food delivery going well and borrow that into Uber Eats. I believe actually Uber Eats, what I understand and remember, was inspired by. So I think Grab is quite innovative and quite a pioneer in its space. And it's also figured out things like it's integrated to groceries, so supermarket shopping. It's also integrated into finance. You can now, have your own finance account. You can now have they have their own bank now. So they're really building that platform out. And then, as you said, they're now reaching this age of profitability. And so this is going to be a new time for them because essentially the last decade has been all about using essentially free money to buy users, right? And that's now allowed a lot of platforms to scale. But the question is, where do we take it from here? What is it? Is it because digitalization is going to achieve its penetration in terms of everyone using smartphones? But what are we using Grab Food for? And where do we take it forward? That's going to be an interesting conversation because if you look at someone like Uber, for example, they haven't gone into such diverse spaces. They've stayed in transportation. You can get an Uber helicopter, right? And Uber boats as well. But you're not getting the kind of offerings of diversity that app. They don't have a bank. There's not an Uber bank. There isn't, these kinds of things. So, I think it's an interesting question looking ahead to what's the sort of pathway that they may take. But it's an amazing story. And I think that's one of, I don't think that they're sort of the poor man's version of Uber. I think they have their own story to stand on. And I think it's really interesting and powerful and a great example of, dare I say it, Southeast Asian, Malaysian innovation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, they're in Singapore now, which is like a sad story.
Yes.
For Malaysia to claim that, Grab was theirs.
Well, I think that's true, right? And you can go sort of back and forth in the fight about who started nasi lemak or which food is the favorite, right? I know people are very passionate in that conversation on both sides. But as someone who comes from Europe and is a guest here and sort of comes to see it as a different perspective, I think yes, they are different, but it's not like people in Singapore are totally, completely, radically different. There's a similar sense of mentality, a similar sense of spirit and adventure and wanting to create these kind of solutions. So I don't think it's anything less, and it's a tribute to the kind of thinking in this region that they're able to do that.
But Jan, before we go into what they can do from here or how they can grow from here, I want to understand a little bit about what was happening all these years, because where it stands right now, Grab has over 190 million users.
190.
190.
Wow.
Across 6 countries and 30 cities
Yeah.
of Southeast Asia, more than that, right? And then Grab market cap as of May 2024 is $14.7 billion,
Yeah.
right? And I know they're not the same companies, but when you look at OpenAI has about 180 million users as of May 2024. And in a span of less than 3 months, the valuation went from, it is now $80 billion, right? So is that a fair comparison to make? Like OpenAI, less than how many years are they in operation? Maybe 3 years? I'm not too sure. But I mean, the valuation really took a big leap. And then Grab has been, I wouldn't say it has taken some time to grow. So what is your analysis of that situation?
Well, I mean, slow and steady, right, wins the race. It's what is said. So I think, what Grab has been able to do, particularly with their achievement of profitability, is they're building a real business that makes real money and, is able to do simple things like make a profit, right? And not just simply suck in venture capital money, other people's monies to fund its growth, which is its own model, but isn't its own end. At some point, you have to achieve a level of viability.
Yeah.
And so I think what Grab has achieved is demonstrate that. And, I think it kind of also has demonstrated a discipline in doing that, because you have to build a different kind of company culture.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just rely on the startup growth hacking, disrupt the markets, right? You've done that.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are the incumbent. Now you have to create an organization that can make money, that can be sustainable, that can pay its bills on time, that's trusted. Right? You're not the usurper trying to take the crown. You've taken the crown, and now you're, ruling the kingdom, and now you need to decide how you're going to rule and what kind of culture you need to do that with. Is, it's like the same spirit of a revolution is not the same spirit of actually governing a country, unless, at least in most places in the world, right? We kind of want to be able to say, hey, we have built something that's reliable, consistent, predictable. And that's really what successful businesses are about. And that's what we're seeing is that transition now where tech is kind of growing up. And we're seeing a lot of tech companies going bankrupt now or facing challenges. I think it was a micro mobility scooter company just went bust. What was it called? The one that owns Line. Bird? Is it maybe Bird? I think it's Bird. Yeah, they had a hot startup.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing the e-scooters and things like that, and then they just filed for bankruptcy in America. So we're seeing this change, and I think it's kudos to Grab for having that decisiveness and maturity in evolving its culture from the hot startup to the mature business mentality. And that's where you're going to need to cut costs. You're spending a lot of money on things that maybe weren't adding value at all, and so they ruthlessly cut costs. They've been very dramatic in doing that, and they're able to demonstrate that they are using that edge to restore their viability in the business. And that in turn is going to make them more attractive for future support and investment. So I think they're in a really interesting place now. They've climbed up so many innovation S curves.
Mm-hmm.
It's like stabilizing it out now. And that's the difference to ChatGPT, where they've obviously achieved explosive growth, remarkable, incredible. But yeah, it remains to be seen what happens. The early successes in the internet age aren't always necessary. In any new age, aren't necessarily the ones that carry it through.
Mm-hmm.
Ford wasn't the first motor company. Microsoft wasn't the first software company, right? Apple wasn't the first maker of smartphones even, right? So with the ages just opening up, I mean, obviously they have a fantastic, I love ChatGPT, and I think we both do, right?
Yeah.
Extraordinary. But let's see how things evolve. But obviously they've got incredible talent. You've basically got all the talent, you've got all the technology, you've got all the money in place. So those are there. It's about sort of building the right kind of culture. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of culture emerges in OpenAI, particularly in this partnership with Microsoft. Because I think that's really what, for me, I'm at a point where when I, for example, I make my investment decisions, it's about consciousness. What state of consciousness can this organization generate based on its culture generally? And, I think that's a key factor in it, its people and its culture. Because over the long run, generally, most of the big players can all access the same money. They can all access the same technology, give or take, right? Or they can build it or build it fast enough to catch up. So, your money and your technology aren't really your differentiators, right? Then you've got the way in which you run the company. And that's really, over the long term, culture is going to be the dominant factor in defining that. So, what's the kind of culture that creates what kind of state of consciousness in the organization? Because, and thereby enabling your people to keep expanding, being visionary and going forward, being innovative. Or maybe you need a culture where it's more about optimization, and you don't need to be innovative, you need to be cost conscious, right? And maybe innovative in your cost cutting mechanisms. So I think that's where we can kind of see in that distinction between Grab and OpenAI, a conversation about what kind of cultures are they building as organizations. And that might even be interesting to ask yourself, what kind of culture is it necessary to get to $1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, $1 trillion company? What are the kind of key components that you need in order to be able to achieve that?
But when you've mentioned culture, and in the same sentence, you've mentioned job cuts, right? You said, doing some cost cuttings. Sorry, you didn't mention job cuts, you said cost cutting. But when I was reading on why Grab was able to declare a profit was because they've cut down about 1,000 jobs.
Yes.
I mean, it just boggles my mind on why they had to do that, because that shows to me that in the first place, you hired 1,000 people and then eventually realized they are redundant. So there's something wrong over there, that culture, I would say. And secondly, a company that's earning 15% commission on every ride share, 15% commission on every food you ordered. I mean, we've just ordered Grab food and we keep ordering. Imagine they're getting 15% on every Grab food order, every grocery being delivered. And I'm someone who use all of that. I have my grocery delivered. So on every little item, on a mint, they're getting 15, I mean, a good amount of commission. And then now they've gone into GrabPay, which is also on every transaction they're earning. And we use GrabPay a lot. So it's just, again, I'm coming to that point of why did you have to cut 1,000 jobs when you have so many streams of revenue, and they have advertising revenue, now they're doing lending, and they're exploring more on that banking area. So do you think Grab is setting the right culture here?
Yes, because the priority is about viability.
Okay.
Make sure the company can keep running, right? You can say whatever you want, but if you're losing loads of money, eventually you're going to go bankrupt and something negative is going to happen out of your control. So it's not about cutting the jobs. It's about saying, what do we need to do to survive and grow and make sure that we're going to be successful?
Mm-hmm.
And 1,000 jobs is a lot, but it's also, part of a bigger story. And sometimes when you are doing things, you try things and they don't work out. And so it's important then to be able to quickly evaluate that it's not working out, or relatively quickly, and then act decisively to adjust the direction so that things can start getting better. And so I think what's important there is that they seem to have hired these 1,000 people, and then they realize that maybe that was too many. Now the world has changed and things have changed. Now they actually don't need them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of what's important for a business to be adaptive in the first place. You have to be able to so-called hire and fire. I mean, hire, make redundant. So of course, there's of course a significant human cost to that, right? So does that damage the culture? Yes, it will in some way, but just because there's a bit of damage doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It reminds people that there is a reality out there. And if you're not making money, people are going to lose their jobs, right? It's just that simple. And so we need to find the right way of doing it. So there's an invitation there for the leaders in Grab and for all people to be in that organization to decide what kind of culture do we want to create. We need to cut jobs, because if don't, it's not going to work. So that's going to happen. The question is, how do we talk about it? How do we engage people in that conversation? How do we invite them into it? Because maybe we want them to come back in the future, right? It's maybe not the right time, the right place. It doesn't mean it's the end of the conversation. So I think that's really, culture is always, I think, more easily understood as how you're doing something rather than what you're doing. What you need to do is you need to reduce jobs because there just isn't money, and you need to figure it out. So, you can cut a bit of money here and there, but when you need to save hundreds of millions of dollars, you need to cut a lot of jobs. There's just no other way around that conversation. So seeing that with clear eyes and understanding that's what's necessary, so that's what you need to do. But the culture is really about the how. How do we talk about that? How do we invite people to the conversation? How do we handle this difficult decision? The individual level, the group level, and everyone, right? But then out of those decisions, then you can create authentic culture, right? Because whatever you do is an opportunity to be taken seriously. And people are mature and can understand that. Of course, it's difficult. Of course, it's painful, scary. But at least if there's a sense of a rationale to it and you can see where it's coming from. Now, you might not agree with it or not, but that's where there's sort of different tiers of consciousness where there has to be that ability to do what's necessary to serve the greater. I don't want to say good, that's not the correct. It's to do what's necessary to protect the kingdom. And I think that's kind of the right approach to it. You sometimes got to just make difficult decisions. And then, of course, that experience is very powerful and thereby grants wisdom, which in turn creates a more mature leadership capability inside an organization because they've had to go through tough decisions. Mm-hmm. And in the future, when things are really booming, they might not rush so quickly into hiring so many people because they're like, hey, remember last time when we hired all those people and then we had to fire everyone and that was not good and that took us, maybe we should learn from that lesson. And that's what I'm saying. There's also an element here of you're not always going to get it right. It's this sort of a willingness to take a stand, get involved, learn from it, and then try again to be better next time. I think that's sort of where there's a real opportunity to create kind of capability that is very powerful in the sense of it doesn't get stuck. You're able to keep adapting and keep listening and keep moving, not getting too hung up on any one point. Yes, we have to deal with 1,000 people, but we have lots of other people, so let's also get on with that. When we're talking, right, we're running our programs, we're so passionate about them. It's easy to get caught up in the negatives, right?
Yes.
This isn't working out, that's not working out. We can get frustrated. And I always think of those as like the shadow. That's the things that were hiding in the shadow that are coming out. We have to talk about them. But there's also things in the light that are going well, and that we should also appreciate those. So the role there perhaps is to kind of be able to create, I wouldn't call it a culture, I would call it a state of consciousness, because the state of consciousness is the now. Like, how is Grab feeling now as a company? How is Uber feeling now as a company, right? Like literally now, right? What's the sort of, people call it like checking the pulse of the organization, but I think it goes much deeper than that. It's really about sort of being able to, because once you understand that, then you understand what kind of change is possible or not. Will people get scared of it? Will they be excited by it? Right? So that's where that conversation will grow into, what are we trying to become? So what is Grab trying to do? Where are we trying to make this happen? Because we want to make sure we have a future direction. Yes, we've done cost cutting. Yes, we're operating and we're getting that. But then where do we jump to in the next stage?
Yeah, paradigm shift. Paradigm shift is a good way of.
Well, I would say a paradigm shift would be quite an aggressive move.
But this is almost what I want to see from Grab as a user. Like, now that we're moving to conversation of what's next for Grab, if you ask me, I use Grab for, as I said, literally everything: finances, payment, everything. And it's like on Tuesdays or Mondays, your lunches are very much the same. Or Wednesdays, I'm coming to your place and we have VCR, right? And it's like it's consistent. The timing is consistent. The food, you have pastrami, I have the chicken, and Shen sometimes has a pastrami and the chicken, and Shen is a bit flaky on that side. But it's like, I almost want Grab to be like, hey, it's 1 p.m., press this button, and then your lunch, you don't have to go through the process of ordering and then doing the payment. Like, I almost want to see Grab doing things autonomously for me. So I do my finances also at the end of the month. I mean, I haven't been doing it lately, but I sort of open Grab and I sort of see where I have spent on food and grocery and whatever it is. And it's like, could you just give me a report at the end of the month on your expenses? And there's just so many other things that, like, I would want Grab to do. Well, what do you think what Grab should do next?
Well, I'm in two minds. On the one hand, I generally mean this. I think Grab is miraculous.
It is.
Right? If you think about it, I just get to sit somewhere, I push some buttons, and boom, food arrives. The food that I wanted, that food is clean, health, safety, safe, it's paid for, right? It's been driven. The journey of that food from a restaurant, right? No, a digital desire arrives in a restaurant. The order gets filled out. It gets made. It gets given to someone. They're going to drive it through the rain and the heat. That sandwich is going through.
Yeah.
You really broke it down. It's quite extraordinary. It's unimaginable to someone 200 years ago, right? Imagine you just have this device and you press a button and a sandwich appears. Like, it would be.
And I like to do that to people coming from Mauritius and Kenya. Like, I have visitors all the time, and I'm like, hey, you want this? Okay, wait, I'm just gonna. And it's just, for them, it's like, whoa, you can get your grocery delivered, like you can get your medicine delivered. To them, it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's so much of pride doing it over and over again. Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't know about this, but one of my favorites is they deliver wine.
Oh,
which, when it's Saturday afternoon, it's 4 or 5 p.m. and you've drunk one bottle of white wine. It'd be nice to have a second, but there's no more white wine. And it's like, oh, do we want to how do we get there? Do we want to walk to the supermarket? No, it's hot and rainy. Oh, we can't drive because we've drunk, so now we're stuck here. Okay, so what do we do? Well, wait a minute. We could just order wine from Grab and it'll come, and it's just extraordinary. And then there's a little bit of a twist, because in Malaysia, you can't order wine from supermarkets and other places, alcohol after 9 p.m. So there's a cut-off there. And so I think that's really, so on the one hand, so the reason why I say that is, so I think it's worth recognizing how far they've come. And I do believe there's a lot of value in just doubling down on the existing paradigm and getting really, really good at that. You're in a position where you are essentially the first choice, right? We want food, we open Grab. We want to go somewhere, we open Grab. It's just, you don't even think, there is no second choice.
No.
It's just that, right? So that's amazing. I would say keep that in mind first. Eyes on the prize. Do what you know, stay in your lane, and just get really, really good at that. And I was reminded of, as you were saying that, something popped into my head where I saw a really cool video from a gentleman from the Middle East. So he's wearing, I hope I get this right, but sort of what looked like a sort of Saudi outfit with the white long.
Yeah, I know it's called the thorn.
Yeah, is that what it's called with
The hat thing.
with the
The name is not coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, the scarf thing around the head. Yeah.
yes, these are trying to use the right words.
Okay.
The clothing device attached
It's
onto
okay.
his head.
I don't think you're offending anyone in this podcast, but yeah. Okay.
Who knows, Hannah, in the future this may go viral.
Oh, wow.
And everyone's like, that guy is a racist. He said this thing about the headgear, right?
Like goes to headgear, right?
Oh God, I'm already. It's a slippery slope. Should move on. Anyway, so what he was saying I thought it was such a, sometimes.
I mean, I did quite agree with the point, but yeah. I mean, I watched the video, you sent it to me.
Right, where he basically was like, what we have unconsciously done in all our design of interface with digital technology is the foundational assumption of the user journey, right? So all of Grab and by extension, Uber apps exist as just a collection of journeys.
Yeah.
I want food. I open the app. I click on food. I click the restaurant. I click food buttons. I press buy. Food comes, right? But his point is, and that's why you're speaking about the AI. So that it's a paradigm leap would be to move beyond user journey. That there are no user journeys, right? And instead, what he was saying is you just interface directly and say, you should know what I want to eat right now. And so it should be like, Hannah, would you like, it's coming up to lunchtime.
Yeah.
Would you like a VCR stacked pastrami or chicken avocado? And you're like, oh, I want the chicken avocado. So great. I know you'd like a waffle with that normally. Do you want one this time? And you'd be like, hell yeah. Because it's okay. I'm going to share half the waffle with Jan. So I won't get too fat. And then it's done.
Yeah.
Now, you might argue that there is a sense of user journey, but the user journey is open, grab AI, talk to it at the end.
Yeah.
Right. And what he achieved is so much of what's difficult about innovation is reimagining the fundamental. When we think about innovation, it's essentially user journeys all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what this man was making as a point was like, it's just screen after screen after screen of user journey, right? Press button, press, and it gets a bit ridiculous because it's like, that's it. This is the future of all digital reality for eternity from now on, is we're just going to keep endlessly moving through screens. No, we're not, right? And that's where his point, where AI can super shortcut that by making it, like you said, much more engaging and knowledgeable about us.
Yeah.
So my Grab could look at my user history of everything I've ordered, when and how, and it could generate a predictive model out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So that would drive that. But I think what's interesting there is that would be a paradigm leap in technological capability, but you're still staying in your lane as a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not helping me buy airplane tickets. It's helping me get my food better, right? That's not the correct English, but it's helping me in my, how do we even call it? We're not trying to use the word journey, right? It's helping me get the food that I want when I want it by predictive modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're still in the same business of food delivery and restaurants, but you're just upgrading the way in which you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the part of the video you sent me was about the men talking about clicks, like we've moved from clicks to tap or something like that. But anyway, conversation for another time. But yeah, I think that's literally where I want Grab to go, because I feel like there's so much of tapping and selecting. Do you want takeaway? No takeaway? Like, do you want? It's just so many. Many tick boxes, and sometimes you're just getting.
I just want a burger, mate.
It's just exactly.
Just give me a burger.
Like. And I'm not even joking. When I was ordering it, that's when Nani came in and I was talking. I was feeling guilty because I'm like, I have to tap on so many boxes and I also want to have a conversation with her. It's like, just get me to the damn food. So yeah, we have a point there. It's just so many screens. Well, yeah, and this has been really fun, I have to say.
Yes.
This conversation on Grab, and it just opened the possibilities of so many more topics that we can have in this setting. Yeah. So thank you for your time, and thank you to our listeners who's been listening so far.
Thank you, Anna.